Zeke Sullivan was 46 years old, a quiet night shift mechanic who spent more time under broken engines than around people. Most of Columbus believed his divorce had left him with nothing but debt and regret. His faded work boots, dented lunchbox, and one-room apartment only seemed to prove it. What they didn't know was that Zeke had once helped expose million-dollar insurance fraud schemes by noticing details everyone else ignored. So, when his ex-wife handed him a rusted 1998 Buick LeSabre as the final piece of their settlement, he simply nodded. But the moment the trunk creaked open and the smell of old oil drifted into the air, his hand froze above a steel lockbox hidden beneath a stained military blanket. If you're watching from somewhere in the world tonight, leave a comment telling us your country and your local time. I'd love to see where everyone is joining from. And if you enjoy slow-burning stories where quiet people uncover dangerous truths, don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow's story might change the way you look at trust forever. The Franklin County Domestic Relations Courthouse sat beneath a gray Ohio sky that matched the mood of everyone walking through its heavy glass doors. Lawyers hurried across polished floors carrying leather briefcases. Couples stood in opposite corners avoiding eye contact. Bailiffs spoke in low voices. Every hallway seemed to echo with endings. Zeke Sullivan arrived 10 minutes early. He wore the same dark blue work shirt he had left hanging in his locker at Carson Auto Repair before taking the morning off. The sleeves were neatly rolled above his wrists. A faded brown jacket covered his shoulders. His boots had fresh grease stains that refused to disappear no matter how hard he scrubbed them. He carried no lawyer, no expensive folder, no dramatic speech, just a folded settlement packet tucked beneath one arm. People noticed him but quickly looked away. He looked like another man who had already lost. Across the waiting area, Claire Sullivan entered with Ethan Cross beside her. Claire's cream-colored designer coat caught every light in the lobby. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. Gold earrings shimmered beneath carefully styled blonde hair. Ethan followed with effortless confidence, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and a silver watch worth more than Zeke's monthly paycheck. Several people glanced toward them. One older woman whispered quietly, "They don't look like they were ever married." The narrator could only observe what passed across Zeke's face. Nothing. His expression stayed calm. His eyes remained fixed on the digital courtroom schedule above the hallway. He never once looked toward Claire until she stopped only a few feet away. "Morning, Zeke." Her voice sounded almost friendly. He nodded once. "Morning." Ethan smiled, not warmly. It was the smile of someone who believed every contest had already been won. "I heard the shop still has you working nights." Zeke answered without emotion. "Engines break at every hour." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it felt much longer. Claire adjusted the strap of her handbag. "I hope you're satisfied with the agreement." Again, Zeke simply nodded. "I signed it." She expected more, an argument, bitterness, questions. Instead, he stood quietly beside the vending machine reading a maintenance notice taped to the wall while courthouse employees passed around him. The hearing lasted less than 25 minutes. Judge Allison Parker reviewed the settlement one final time. The marriage was officially over. The house belonged to Claire. The retirement accounts had already been divided. Savings were gone. Furniture remained with Claire. The investment property had been sold months earlier. Only one asset remained unfinished: the old Buick. Court Clerk Denise Holloway read from the document. One 1998 Buick LeSabre. Vehicle transferred in full ownership to Mr. Zeke Sullivan. Accepted in current condition with no warranty. A few people sitting behind them exchanged quiet smiles. Even the clerk looked surprised. The Buick had almost 280,000 miles. Its paint had faded from blue to gray. Rust covered both rear wheel wells. The windshield carried a long crack stretching from corner to corner. It was barely worth scrap value. Judge Parker looked over her glasses. "Mr. Sullivan, do you accept the vehicle?" "Yes, Your Honor." "No objections?" "No." Claire looked briefly toward Ethan. Something about the glance felt rehearsed, almost relieved. The papers were signed. The judge stood. Court adjourned. Outside, sunlight pushed through the clouds for the first time that morning. Claire handed in Zeke a small envelope. "The title." He accepted it. Then she reached into her purse again. A single brass key rested in her palm. "The ignition." She smiled. "You always liked fixing broken things." Ethan chuckled softly. "I would have donated it." Neither of them noticed that Zeke's attention wasn't on the key. It rested instead on Claire's hand. For just a fraction of a second, her fingers hesitated before releasing it, like someone reluctant to let go. The tiny movement lasted less than half a heartbeat. But Zeke noticed. He always noticed. The Buick waited alone in the courthouse parking lot. Its tires sagged slightly. The chrome bumper had almost disappeared beneath rust. Someone had written, "Wash me," across the dirty rear window months ago. Rain had smeared the letters until they looked like ghosts. Zeke walked around the vehicle once. No hurry, no emotion. He checked the tire tread, opened the hood, looked beneath the chassis, ran his fingers across the trunk seam. Nothing unusual, yet something felt wrong. He couldn't explain why. His instincts had saved investigators millions of dollars years ago by spotting tiny inconsistencies inside burned vehicles and staged accidents. Those instincts whispered now, "Pay attention." He slid behind the wheel. The cabin smelled of dust and old vinyl. An air freshener shaped like a pine tree still hung from the mirror. Expired insurance cards remained tucked into the visor. A faded receipt from a Columbus grocery store sat beneath the passenger seat. Everything looked abandoned, forgotten. He turned the key. The engine coughed twice before settling into a rough idle. As he pulled from the parking lot, something heavy shifted somewhere behind him. Not loudly, just enough. Thunk, then silence. Zeke glanced into the rearview mirror. Nothing. Traffic carried him onto Interstate 70 westbound. The Buick wandered slightly left before correcting itself. The steering wheel vibrated above 50 miles per hour. Every bump produced another faint movement from the rear compartment. Thunk. Pause. Thunk. Not metal against metal. Something heavier. Something boxed. At a red light outside Grove City, he stepped out and examined the trunk. Locked. Normal. He inserted the ignition key. It would not turn. Strange. Most Buicks from that generation shared one key for every lock. He crouched lower. Fresh scratches surrounded the keyhole. Not old scratches. Bright silver lines cut through the rust. Someone had recently tried opening it, or locking it. He stood silently while impatient drivers honked behind him. Then he climbed back inside and continued toward his apartment. Darkness had settled over Columbus by the time he parked beside the aging brick building where he rented a second-floor unit. He shut off the engine. Again, the rear compartment shifted. Thunk. He remained seated, listening. The neighborhood was quiet except for distant train horns and barking dogs. He opened the glove compartment looking for old registration papers. Nothing unusual. Then his fingers brushed against something loose beneath the dashboard trim. A strip of black electrical tape. He peeled it away carefully. A tiny brass key dropped into his palm. Smaller than the ignition key. Older. Its edges had been worn smooth by years of use. Stamped across one side were two tiny letters. TR. Zeke stared at it without moving. His eyes slowly lifted toward the rearview mirror. The trunk sat motionless behind him under the glow of a broken parking lot light. Whatever was inside had waited years. It could wait one more night. But deep inside, a feeling he had not trusted since his investigation days quietly returned. The Buick had never been the joke everyone believed it was. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure nobody ever looked inside. The next morning arrived cold and clear over Columbus. Zeke Sullivan barely slept. He spent most of the night sitting beside his apartment window, the tiny brass key resting on the kitchen table beneath a single lamp. Every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the parking lot below, where the faded Buick LeSabre sat alone beneath a flickering security light. The car looked harmless. Old, forgotten. Exactly the kind of vehicle everyone ignored. That thought bothered him more than anything else. People often hid valuable things where nobody wanted to look. By 6:30, he was already driving toward Carson Auto Repair on the east side of town. Saturday mornings were quiet. The garage doors remained closed. The front office lights stayed off. Only Zeke possessed a master key. The building smelled of motor oil, rubber tires, and old concrete soaked with decades of grease. It felt familiar. Safe. He pulled the Buick into Bay 3 and lowered the garage door behind him. Outside, traffic disappeared. Silence settled across the shop. For a long moment, he simply stood beside the trunk. The small brass key remained warm inside his palm. His heartbeat stayed steady. The narrator could only observe what crossed his face. No excitement, no fear, only concentration. Years ago, during temporary contract work assisting insurance investigators, Zeke had learned one simple rule: never disturb evidence before documenting it. He retrieved his phone. He photographed every inch of the rear bumper, the rust, the scratches, the damaged lock, the faded license plate. Then he recorded a short video showing the condition of the vehicle before touching anything. Only then did he kneel beside the trunk. The ignition key still refused to fit. The smaller brass key slid smoothly into the lock. Click, the sound echoed through the empty garage. He paused. Nothing moved, no alarm, no surprise. Slowly, he lifted the heavy trunk lid. Dust floated through the morning sunlight that filtered from the high windows. The smell hit first. Old engine oil, mildew, dry leather, something metallic. The trunk looked almost empty. A faded green military blanket covered the floor. Several cracked toolboxes sat near the spare tire compartment. One rusted jack leaned against the sidewall. Everything appeared exactly as someone would expect from an abandoned 28-year-old sedan. Too ordinary. Zeke's eyes narrowed. He reached for the blanket. Instead of pulling it away quickly, he folded one corner carefully backward. Underneath sat a rectangular steel lockbox. Dark gray, military style, heavy enough to dent the trunk floor. Across the lid, someone had scratched two initials. TR, the same initials stamped onto the tiny brass key. Zeke did not touch it. He photographed it from every angle. Then he noticed something else. Half hidden beneath one side of the blanket rested a silver wristwatch. Its leather band had cracked with age. The crystal carried a small chip near the number 4. His breathing slowed. He knew that watch. Thomas Sullivan. His father wore it every day for nearly 20 years. After Thomas died from a heart attack, the watch disappeared during the confusion of settling his estate. Claire insisted nobody had seen it. The family assumed it had been lost. Yet, here it sat. Inside a trunk she had handed away without hesitation. Zeke picked it up gently. The hands had stopped forever at 8:17. His thumb brushed against the worn leather. He remembered helping his father repair tractors on their family land outside Springfield. That same watch always glinted beneath the afternoon sun. For the first time that morning, emotion almost reached his face. Almost. He placed the watch carefully on a clean cloth. Then he returned to the lockbox. The brass key fit perfectly. Another click. The lid opened slowly. Inside rested several neat stacks of documents wrapped in plastic. A disposable flip phone, a black flash drive, 3 small notebooks, an envelope sealed with yellow tape. Everything appeared organized, prepared, almost archived. He removed nothing. One item at a time, he photographed the contents exactly as they appeared. Only afterward did he begin examining them. The first folder contained bank statements, account numbers, wire transfers, property tax receipts. The name Thomas Sullivan appeared repeatedly across multiple pages. Estate trust account. Zeke frowned. Those records had supposedly disappeared nearly 3 years earlier. The probate attorney blamed a filing mistake. The bank claimed archived copies were incomplete. Without those records, thousands of dollars vanished without explanation. Now, the originals sat inside an old Buick. The second folder contained photographs. One immediately caught his attention. Claire stood beside Ethan Cross outside an office building in downtown Cincinnati. Both smiled toward the camera. The image date remained visible. May 12th, 3 years ago. Zeke remembered that day perfectly. Claire claimed she had attended a real estate conference in Chicago. The lie suddenly became undeniable. He continued turning pages. More photographs appeared: parking garages, restaurants, hotel entrances, business meetings. Always Claire, always Ethan, always months before the divorce began. Zeke placed every photograph back exactly where he found it. His movements remained slow and deliberate. Nothing inside the lockbox suggested coincidence anymore. Then he reached the third folder. Warehouse Fire Claim. The title stretched across the cover in bold black letters. Inside were insurance evaluations, vehicle inventories, settlement calculations. The payout exceeded $740,000. Ethan's company logo appeared at the bottom of several pages. Handwritten notes filled the margins. Some pages contained signatures. Others listed vehicle identification numbers. Zeke immediately recognized 2 VIN numbers from cars he personally inspected years earlier. Both vehicles had suspicious damage patterns inconsistent with accidental fires. Back then, investigators closed the case for lack of evidence. Now, those same claim files had resurfaced. His pulse remained calm. His thoughts became sharper. He reached for the flash drive. Before plugging it into any computer, he photographed both sides. Then he placed it beside the folders. The burner phone remained powered off. Its battery looked old but intact. He hesitated, then pressed the power button. Nothing happened. 5 seconds passed, 10. Finally, the tiny screen glowed blue. Battery low, searching network. The phone vibrated once. Zeke stared. A new message appeared across the display. 11:02 a.m. Is everything gone? He did not blink. The message had arrived seconds earlier. Someone believed this phone was still active. Someone believed whoever possessed the Buick would answer. Zeke slowly turned toward the closed garage door. Outside, faint traffic drifted across the city. Inside, only the ticking wall clock could be heard. He looked back at the phone. Another vibration. Another message. Call me before noon. His eyes shifted toward the lockbox, toward his father's watch, toward the photographs proving years of lies. The quiet mechanic everyone believed had lost everything suddenly understood one terrifying possibility. Claire had never given him the Buick as a joke. She had accidentally returned the one piece of evidence capable of destroying every lie that built her new life. The burner phone remained in Zeke Sullivan's hand long after the screen went dark. The battery had finally died. The last message still echoed inside his mind. Is everything gone? Someone expected an answer. Someone believed the evidence had disappeared forever. Zeke carefully placed the phone back inside the lockbox exactly where he had found it. Every document returned to its original position. Every folder lined up along the same edges. Even the military blanket was folded again before he covered the box. Nothing inside the garage suggested that anyone had opened the trunk. Years of experience had taught him that panic destroyed evidence faster than criminals ever could. Outside, Columbus moved through another ordinary Saturday. Families shopped at Easton Town Center. Children rode bicycles through quiet neighborhoods. Restaurants filled with lunch crowds. No one knew that inside a small repair shop, a forgotten Buick contained enough secrets to rewrite nearly 4 years of one man's life. Zeke locked the garage and drove home in his old pickup instead of the Buick. The sedan remained hidden inside Bay 3. No cameras from nearby businesses could see it there. No curious customer would accidentally notice it. For the first time since the divorce, Zeke canceled his overtime shift. He climbed the narrow stairs to his apartment, carrying only the silver wristwatch that had belonged to his father. The apartment was simple. 1 bedroom, a worn leather couch, a small kitchen. The television still sat inside the same wooden cabinet he had owned during his marriage. Very little had changed. He placed the watch on the dining table and stared at it. Thomas Sullivan had rarely spoken loudly. He believed people revealed themselves if given enough silence. As a boy, Zeke hated that advice. As a man, he understood it completely. His father used to repair farm equipment outside Springfield until sunset. While neighbors argued over fences or money, Thomas simply kept working. Eventually, the truth always surfaced. That memory slowly pulled Zeke backward. 3 years earlier, the funeral had ended under steady rain. Friends filled the church basement with casseroles and coffee, while relatives discussed inheritance papers. Claire had stood beside him wearing black gloves and expensive sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. She squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this." He believed her. The estate should have been simple. Thomas owned 83 acres of farmland, a modest checking account, several investment certificates, and the old farmhouse where Zeke grew up. Nothing complicated, nothing hidden, yet within weeks everything became confusion. The attorney handling probate claimed several banking documents could not be located. Property tax files were incomplete. Certain transfers lacked supporting paperwork. The bank delayed releasing funds. Then money disappeared. Nearly $300,000. No explanation, no clear trail. The family attorney quietly suggested that Thomas may have moved assets before his death. Claire supported the theory. She encouraged Zeke not to fight. "It'll cost more than it's worth." At the time, exhaustion defeated suspicion. He accepted the loss. Another memory surfaced. Claire standing inside their kitchen. She held several bank statements in her hands. Tears filled her eyes. "Zeke, did you move money without telling me?" He looked genuinely confused. "What money?" She slid papers across the counter. Withdrawals, transfers, signatures. Every page appeared to carry his name. He denied everything. Claire cried harder. "I don't even know who you are anymore." That single sentence became the beginning of the end. Friends stopped calling. Family members avoided difficult conversations. Even Olivia slowly drifted toward Claire after hearing endless arguments she never fully understood. The divorce followed almost automatically. Lawyers, mediation, paperwork, silence. Now, sitting alone beside his father's recovered watch, Zeke replayed every conversation from those years. Details he ignored suddenly stood out. Claire had insisted on hiring a specific probate attorney. Claire always answered the bank's phone calls before he reached home. Claire repeatedly discouraged independent audits. Claire had convinced him to sell investment shares quickly. Small decisions, harmless at the time. Together, they formed something much larger. He opened his laptop. Instead of examining the flash drive, he searched public records: warehouse fire, insurance settlement, property transfers, Ethan Cross. Within minutes, several local newspaper articles appeared. Nothing dramatic. A commercial warehouse outside Cincinnati burned nearly 4 years ago. Insurance payout approved. Investigation closed. No criminal charges. The photographs inside the lockbox suddenly carried greater weight. Claire and Ethan already knew each other before the divorce, much earlier, long before they claimed to have met through mutual friends. The coincidence disappeared. Zeke leaned back. His apartment remained completely quiet except for the ticking kitchen clock. He looked toward the window. Clouds drifted slowly across the afternoon sky. Then another memory returned. One he had nearly forgotten. The Buick. 3 years ago, Claire drove that same car only once after Thomas's funeral. She claimed it stalled outside Springfield and left it parked behind an old storage building overnight. The next morning, Ethan had unexpectedly appeared with a tow truck. He said he happened to be nearby. At the time, Zeke thanked him. Now, the memory felt different. Much different. He reached for a yellow legal pad. Without emotion, he began writing dates: funeral, missing documents, warehouse fire, Claire meeting Ethan, property transfers, bank withdrawals, divorce filing, Buick breakdown. Each event connected to another. Thin lines stretched across the page until an entire timeline emerged. The story everyone believed no longer made sense. His phone rang. Unknown number. He ignored it. Seconds later, another call arrived. Unknown again, ignored. Then voicemail notification appeared. No message. Only silence. Zeke looked toward the lockbox key resting beside his father's watch. Someone might already realize the Buick was no longer where they expected. Someone might be trying to find whoever possessed it. The realization did not frighten him. It sharpened him. He walked into the bedroom and opened an old cedar chest. Inside rested a small fireproof document case. He placed the watch inside. Then he copied every photograph from his phone onto 2 encrypted memory cards. One stayed in the apartment. The second slipped into the pocket of his work jacket. Evidence survived by existing in more than one place. That lesson had saved investigators countless times. Evening arrived. Streetlights flickered outside. The apartment complex grew quiet. Zeke brewed black coffee instead of dinner. He stood at the window overlooking the parking lot. Nothing unusual: a delivery van, 2 teenagers skateboarding, an elderly couple walking their dog. Then a dark SUV rolled slowly past the building. It did not stop. It circled once, then disappeared around the corner. 5 minutes later it returned. This time the driver slowed almost to a crawl while looking toward the apartment entrance. The windows were heavily tinted. No license plate was visible from his angle. The SUV drove away again. Zeke never moved. His face remained expressionless. Only his eyes followed the vehicle until it vanished into traffic. He looked down at the brass key still resting in his hand. The narrator could see only one conclusion forming inside his mind. The people who hid the truth had started looking for it. And somewhere in Columbus, someone was beginning to realize that the quiet mechanic they had underestimated might now possess everything needed to destroy them. Sunday morning arrived with steady rain. The streets of Columbus shimmered beneath gray clouds as water collected along curbs and parking lots. Wind rattled old storefront signs while church bells echoed across downtown. Zeke Sullivan left his apartment before sunrise. He carried only a small backpack. Inside rested photocopies of every document from the lockbox, the photographs of Claire and Ethan, and a notebook containing the timeline he had spent half the night organizing. The originals never left the garage. He refused to make the mistake of carrying all the evidence in one place. His destination sat 40 miles north along Interstate 71. A roadside diner called Millstone Cafe, famous for homemade pies and coffee that tasted stronger than it looked. The place had not changed in 20 years. Truck drivers filled one side. Farmers occupied another. The old jukebox near the entrance still played country songs from the 1980s. Zeke entered quietly. He immediately recognized the woman sitting in the back booth beside the window. Linda Harper looked older than he remembered. Her gray hair rested neatly against a navy jacket. Reading glasses hung from a silver chain around her neck. She had retired from the Ohio Department of Insurance 6 years earlier after helping dismantle one of the state's largest staged accident rings. She had once called Zeke the mechanic who saw what detectives missed. She looked up as he approached. "You've got that face again." Zeke sat down. "What face?" "The one you wore before every fraud case." The waitress arrived with coffee. Neither touched the menu. Linda studied him for several seconds. "You didn't drive all the way out here to talk about old times?" "No." He removed a thick envelope from his backpack. "I need another pair of eyes." Linda opened the folder. The smile disappeared from her face almost immediately. She read quietly. One page, then another, then another. Finally, she removed the photographs. Her eyes stopped on the image of Claire and Ethan standing together outside the Cincinnati office building. When was this taken? 3 years ago. Weren't you still married then? Very much. Linda leaned backward. The rain tapped softly against the diner window. She reached for another photograph, then another, then the insurance claim documents. Her expression slowly hardened. "I know this file." Zeke remained silent. Linda pointed toward the warehouse claim number. "This case bothered me for months." "What happened?" "The fire spread too quickly. The reports never matched. The payout happened anyway." She flipped several pages, then stopped. Her finger rested on a signature near the bottom. Without speaking, she slid the paper toward Zeke. He looked carefully. His own name appeared beside a witness certification. Except it wasn't his handwriting. Not even close. The signature looked practiced, careful, professional, but fake. Linda removed a pen from her purse. She circled several letters. "See these loops? They're identical. The same person forged every signature." Zeke stared without blinking. Years ago, he had signed dozens of repair inspections for insurance companies. He knew exactly how his own handwriting looked. Someone had copied it. Someone had practiced. Linda looked directly into his eyes. This wasn't random. This was planned. Coffee arrived. Neither touched it. The waitress sensed the tension and quietly walked away. Linda continued reading. The estate banking documents troubled her even more. She pulled a small calculator from her purse. Numbers disappeared beneath rapid keystrokes. Transfer after transfer, routing numbers, account balances. Finally, she exhaled slowly. They washed the money. Zeke remained silent. "They moved your father's estate through multiple business accounts." She tapped another page. "And whoever organized this knew exactly how probate delays work." He finally spoke. "Can you prove it?" Linda folded her hands together. "Maybe, but not today." The answer disappointed him only slightly. Patience had always served him better than anger. Linda finished organizing the documents into separate piles. Then she lowered her voice. "Listen carefully. If Claire and Ethan are connected to insurance fraud and estate theft, confronting them now would be the dumbest thing you could do. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because the second they know you found this, every computer, every phone, every paper trail disappears. She slid the photographs back into the envelope. They already think the evidence is gone. Keep it that way. Outside, the rain intensified. Pickup trucks splashed through standing water. The diner slowly emptied as lunchtime approached. Linda reached inside her handbag again. This time, she removed an old business card. The printing had faded. One phone number remained handwritten across the back. My former forensic accountant. Retired FBI consultant. He owes me 2 favors. Zeke accepted the card. No phone calls from your apartment. No emails. No text messages. Find a public library or prepaid phone. He nodded. She wasn't finished. And one more thing. If those documents are originals, never carry them around. I already made copies. Linda looked impressed. The originals are somewhere safe. Good. Keep them safer. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Linda unexpectedly picked up the silver watch resting beside Zeke's coffee cup. He had carried it with him without realizing. Her eyes softened. I remember your father. He fixed my tractor for free once. He refused payment. Zeke looked at the watch. He always said tools were meant to help people. Linda smiled faintly. He was right. Then her expression changed again. She turned the watch over. The leather strap had almost separated from age. Something beneath it caught her attention. A tiny engraving hidden under the buckle. She held it closer to the window. 3 numbers, 8, 3, 7, and beneath them 2 letters. SF. Linda frowned. Did you ever notice this? No. You should. She handed the watch back. It might mean nothing. It might mean everything. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Outside, rain continued falling. Zeke stood beneath the awning, watching Linda drive away. Only after her car disappeared onto the highway did he climb into his pickup. He did not drive home. Instead, he stopped at First National Bank on High Street. He rented the smallest available safety deposit box. Inside, he placed only 3 things. His father's watch, the flash drive, 1 memory card containing every photograph. The originals stayed hidden elsewhere. The bank manager locked the vault door. Heavy steel closed with a deep mechanical sound. For the first time since opening the Buick's trunk, Zeke felt a small measure of relief. If something happened to him, at least part of the truth would survive. Late that afternoon, he returned to Carson Auto Repair. The Buick still sat quietly inside Bay 3, untouched, exactly where he had left it. He walked around the car once, then twice. Something shiny beneath the rear bumper caught his attention. He knelt slowly. Wedged between the exhaust pipe and the frame rested a tiny black object no larger than a quarter. Magnetic. Plastic. With a blinking green light. Zeke did not touch it. His eyes remained fixed on the device. A GPS tracker. Someone wasn't searching for the Buick. Someone already knew exactly where it was. The blinking green light beneath the Buick disappeared 2 minutes later. Zeke Sullivan removed the magnetic tracker with a pair of long-handled pliers instead of touching it with his fingers. He slipped the device into a clean plastic bag from the parts counter and sealed it without saying a word. The garage remained quiet. Only the ticking wall clock and the hum of fluorescent lights broke the silence. He carried the bag to his workbench and examined the tracker beneath a magnifying lamp. No serial number, no company logo. Just black plastic and a tiny battery. Cheap, disposable. The kind of device anyone could order online. He did not destroy it. He did not remove the battery. Instead, he placed it inside an old metal toolbox at the far corner of the shop, where the signal would remain active but stationary. If someone was watching the tracker, they would believe the Buick never moved. Zeke glanced toward the old sedan. The faded paint reflected the overhead lights. The trunk remained closed. Its secrets stayed hidden. For now. He returned to his repair work as if nothing had happened. A customer arrived with a damaged Ford Explorer. Another needed brake pads replaced. Oil changes filled the afternoon schedule. Zeke worked quietly beneath lifted vehicles while his thoughts never left the Buick. Several times he walked past Bay 3 without looking inside. Routine protected him. Routine prevented mistakes. By late afternoon, the phone inside the office rang. His coworker Pete answered, then leaned out of the doorway. "Zeke, call for you." He wiped grease from his hands and picked up the receiver. "Carson Auto." For several seconds, no one spoke. Then a familiar voice appeared. Soft, controlled, almost cheerful. "Hi, Zeke." "Claire." He remained silent. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "You called." "I did." Another pause. "I was thinking about that old Buick." Zeke looked toward Bay 3. "It runs." Claire laughed quietly. "I didn't ask that." Silence again, then she continued. "Did you ever get the trunk open?" The question arrived too casually, too directly. Zeke leaned against the office wall. The locks rusted. "Still, looks that way." "You sure?" "I haven't spent much time on it." Claire seemed relieved. "Probably not worth fixing." "Probably." Another pause. Then she changed subjects. "Olivia asked about you." His expression never changed. "How is she?" "Busy. School. Friends. You know teenagers." "I suppose." Claire lowered her voice. "If you ever decide you don't want the Buick anymore, Ethan knows someone who collects old cars." "I'll keep that in mind." The line went quiet. Neither hung up. Finally, Claire spoke one last sentence. "Some things are better left buried." The call ended. Zeke slowly returned the receiver to its cradle. Pete looked curious. "Everything okay?" "Wrong number." Pete shrugged and walked away. Zeke did not move. The sentence repeated inside his head. Some things are better left buried. That wasn't nostalgia. It was fear. An hour later, Carson Auto officially closed. The mechanics left one by one. The parking lot emptied. Sunlight faded behind heavy clouds. Only Zeke remained. He switched off the front office lights and walked toward Bay 3. The Buick waited in darkness. His flashlight beam swept across the floor. Nothing unusual. Then headlights appeared outside. A black SUV rolled slowly past the building. It did not stop. It continued another 50 yards, turned around, returned. Again, it crawled past. This time, the driver looked toward the garage entrance. Zeke stayed hidden behind the lifted Buick. The SUV disappeared again. 5 minutes later, another vehicle entered the parking lot. A white pickup. 2 men stepped out. Neither looked like customers. One wore jeans and work boots. The other carried a baseball cap pulled low across his face. They knocked on the locked office door. No answer. One peered through the window. The second walked around the side of the building. Zeke quietly activated the security cameras from his phone. Every angle began recording. The taller man returned carrying a flashlight. He scanned the lot. Then both men waited beside the entrance. Exactly 11 minutes later, Zeke unlocked the front door from inside. The men smiled immediately. "Sorry to bother you." The taller one extended his hand. "My name's Carl. We heard you picked up an old Buick." Zeke ignored the handshake. "Who told you that?" "Friend of a friend." The shorter man stepped forward. "Blue LeSabre. 98 model. We collect classics." Zeke almost smiled. Nobody called a rusted LeSabre a classic. "It isn't for sale." Carl reached inside his jacket, not for a weapon, for cash. He removed a thick envelope. $10,000, maybe more. Fresh $100 bills. We'll tow it tonight. No paperwork needed. Zeke looked only once, then looked away. Not interested. Carl laughed. You haven't even heard the offer. I heard enough. The shorter man stepped closer. You don't understand. We really need that car. Zeke folded his arms. Then buy another one. There aren't many left. The man's smile disappeared. For a brief second, his jacket opened wider. Something clipped inside caught the light. A plastic identification badge, blue background, silver lettering, only half visible. But Zeke recognized the company logo instantly. Guardian Mutual Insurance, Ethan Cross's employer. The man noticed Zeke's eyes. He quickly closed his jacket. Too late. The damage was done. Carl cleared his throat. Think about it. My number's inside. He slid a business card onto the counter. No company, no address, only a phone number. The two men walked back toward the pickup. Before climbing inside, Carl turned once more. If that old car starts causing problems, call us. The engine started. The pickup disappeared into evening traffic. Zeke locked the office again, then replayed the security footage. Every camera captured their faces, their truck, their conversation, even the insurance badge hidden beneath the jacket. He copied every file onto another memory card, then stored the original footage on the shop server. Redundancy. Evidence survived through duplication. Night settled over Columbus. The city lights reflected across wet pavement outside. Inside Bay 3, Zeke stood beside the Buick once more. His flashlight swept beneath the frame. No additional trackers, no hidden cameras, only rust and decades of road dirt. He opened the driver's door, sat behind the cracked steering wheel. His eyes drifted toward the rearview mirror. The trunk remained invisible behind him. Yet somehow it felt alive, waiting. His phone vibrated. Unknown number, one text message, no greeting, no signature, just 7 words. We can pay more than the car's worth. Zeke stared at the screen, then looked slowly toward the trunk. For the first time since opening it, he understood something that changed everything. The people chasing the Buick didn't know exactly what was inside. They only knew they desperately wanted it back. And desperate people made mistakes. Monday afternoon arrived warm and bright across central Ohio. Traffic crawled along Interstate 270 as office workers hurried home beneath clear blue skies. Gas stations filled with commuters. Fast food drive-through lines stretched into the streets. Zeke Sullivan had spent the morning repairing transmissions without speaking more than a few dozen words. His hands stayed busy. His mind never slowed. The text message from the previous night remained unanswered. The tracker still sat sealed inside the old metal toolbox. The Buick remained hidden behind locked garage doors. Everything stayed exactly where it belonged. Around 4 o'clock, Pete tossed a set of keys across the shop. Mind taking these brake rotors over to Henderson Tire? Zeke caught them without looking up. The drive would take 15 minutes. Nothing unusual. He climbed into the company pickup and headed east. Halfway there, the fuel warning light appeared. The gauge hovered near empty. He pulled into a speedway station near Reynoldsburg. The place bustled with people. Teenagers bought energy drinks. Construction workers filled diesel trucks. A mother hurried 2 children towards the convenience store. Life moved in every direction. Zeke stepped toward the gas pump, then stopped. Across 2 rows of parked vehicles stood a silver Honda Civic. A young woman leaned against the driver's door while checking something on her phone. Brown hair tied into a loose ponytail, university sweatshirt, white sneakers. She looked older than the last time he had seen her, yet instantly familiar. Olivia, his daughter. She had turned 17 3 months earlier. He had mailed a birthday card. It came back unopened. He watched quietly for several seconds. The narrator could only follow the thoughts inside one man. Zeke did not feel anger, only distance, the kind that grows slowly between people who stop hearing each other. Olivia looked up. Her eyes met his. Surprise crossed her face, then uncertainty. Neither moved. Finally, Zeke walked toward her. "Hi," she hesitated. "Hi." Silence followed. Cars pulled in and out around them. Gas pumps clicked. Someone laughed near the ice machine. Neither knew how to begin. Olivia finally spoke. "I didn't know you still drove trucks. This one belongs to work." "Oh." Another silence. She glanced toward the ground. "You look okay. So do you," neither smiled. The years between them seemed longer than they really were. Zeke noticed the front tire on her Honda looked low. Without mentioning it, he crouched beside the wheel, his thumb pressed against the rubber. Then he stood. "Your pressure's low." "I know. I keep forgetting." He walked back to his truck. Inside the glove compartment rested an old brass tire gauge scratched from years of use. He returned and handed it to her. "It still works." She looked surprised. "You want it back?" "No." She accepted it carefully. For several seconds, she simply turned it over in her hands, as if remembering something. "When I was little, you checked Mom's tires every month." Zeke nodded. "You liked pushing the button." A tiny smile almost appeared before disappearing again. The memory faded. Reality returned. Olivia looked uncomfortable. "I should go." "You don't have to, I know." But she didn't leave. Instead, she looked toward his hands. Fresh cuts crossed his knuckles. Small bruises darkened 2 fingers. "You still fix everything yourself." "Mostly." She hesitated again, then quietly asked the question that mattered. "Why didn't you ever fight harder?" Zeke looked toward the highway. Cars rushed past beyond the station entrance. "I didn't want you choosing between parents." Olivia looked away. "Mom said you stopped caring." "I know." "You never said anything." "I know." His voice remained calm. No bitterness, no defense, only acceptance. That made the silence heavier. Finally, Olivia sighed. "Ethan says Grandpa's old farm is finally getting sold." Zeke's attention sharpened instantly. He kept his expression unchanged. "When? I don't know." "Soon." "He keeps talking about developers." "He says nobody wants old farmland anymore." Zeke nodded once. "What do you think?" She shrugged. "I've never even been there." The answer hurt more than he expected. She had spent entire summers there as a child, fishing in the creek, collecting fireflies, running through cornfields beside her grandfather. Now, those memories seemed almost erased. Olivia continued. "Mom says it'll pay for college." Again, Zeke remained silent. The narrator could see his thoughts tightening behind calm eyes. The farmland. Everything returned to the farmland. The missing estate records, the forged bank papers, the probate delays, the photographs, the warehouse claims, the Buick, now the property sale. It was never about money alone. It was about ownership, about control. Olivia interrupted his thoughts. "They're meeting someone Wednesday." "Who?" "I don't know. A company. Something Ridge." She frowned while trying to remember. "Buckeye Ridge?" Her eyes widened. "Yeah, that's it." "You know them." Zeke simply nodded. "I've heard the name." She looked relieved to change the subject. "Ethan says we'll probably move to Cincinnati." "When?" "Maybe this summer." Another silence settled between them. Neither seemed ready to leave. Then Olivia reached into her backpack. She removed an old photograph folded in half. "I found this cleaning my room." She handed it to him. The picture showed 3 people standing beside a rusty red tractor. Thomas Sullivan smiled beneath a straw hat. Young Olivia sat on his shoulders laughing. Beside them stood a much younger Zeke covered in engine grease. The photograph had faded around the edges. Someone had written across the back, "Family stays together." Thomas's handwriting. Zeke looked at it quietly. Olivia stared toward the gas pumps. "I almost threw it away, but I couldn't." He folded it carefully and slipped it inside his wallet. "Thank you." She nodded, then climbed into the Honda. Before closing the door, she spoke one last sentence. "Ethan gets really nervous whenever people mention Grandpa's farm." The engine started. She drove away into afternoon traffic. Zeke remained standing beside the pump long after her car disappeared. The breeze carried the smell of gasoline and fresh-cut grass across the parking lot. He finally climbed into the company pickup. Instead of driving toward Henderson Tire, he pulled into a nearby empty church parking lot. He opened the notebook containing his growing timeline, underlined one phrase twice, "Sullivan Farm." Then below it he wrote another, "Real target, the old Buick." The stolen estate money, the forged signatures. They were only pieces. The land had always been the prize. As he closed the notebook, his phone vibrated. A new message arrived from Linda Harper. Only 5 words appeared on the screen. "Don't let them sell it." The Sullivan family farm sat nearly 50 miles east of Columbus, hidden behind rolling fields and narrow county roads that had barely changed in half a century. The land stretched across 83 acres outside Springfield. Cornfields bordered the northern fence. A shallow creek divided the western pasture. An aging white farmhouse overlooked everything from the top of a gentle hill. For most people driving by, it looked forgotten. For Zeke Sullivan, it held every childhood memory worth keeping. Tuesday morning arrived cool and quiet. Mist drifted over the fields as the first sunlight reached the tree line. Zeke parked his pickup behind an abandoned grain silo instead of using the main entrance. Old habits returned naturally. Years spent assisting fraud investigators had taught him never to arrive where people expected. He climbed over the wire fence and walked toward the farmhouse. Tall grass brushed against his boots. Birds scattered from broken fence posts. The air smelled of wet soil and fresh hay. Nothing seemed unusual. Until he reached the eastern property line. Bright orange survey stakes stood every 20 feet. Small ribbons fluttered in the breeze. Fresh paint marked several trees. White flags lined the edge of the gravel road. Construction markers. Professional, recent. Someone had already measured the land. Zeke crouched beside one stake. Stamped across the side appeared a company name. Midwest Survey Services. The date showed only 6 days earlier. His eyes slowly moved across the open field. Near the old barn stood 2 white pickup trucks. Several men wearing reflective safety vests studied blueprints spread across a truck hood. One pointed toward the farmhouse, another toward the creek. The meeting looked organized, planned, not exploratory. Development had already begun. Zeke remained hidden behind a line of oak trees. He watched quietly. The narrator could only follow the thoughts inside one man. The farm was no longer simply family property. Someone believed they already owned it. Nearly 40 minutes passed before the trucks finally departed. Only then did Zeke walk toward the farmhouse. The front porch sagged beneath years of weather. Paint peeled from wooden rails. Wind chimes still hung beside the front door, exactly where his mother left them years before. They moved softly in the breeze. He unlocked the door with the old brass house key he still carried. Dust covered nearly every surface. Furniture remained untouched. His father's rocking chair faced the front window. A coffee mug still rested beside it. The calendar on the wall remained frozen on October, the month Thomas Sullivan died. Everything else remained exactly as time had abandoned it. Zeke walked slowly through every room. He touched nothing: the kitchen, the hallway, his old bedroom, the attic stairs. Every corner carried memories. Every room reminded him what the divorce had quietly taken away. Then his attention shifted toward the study. His father had always kept records there. Property taxes, crop sales, equipment receipts, everything organized. The filing cabinet still stood against the wall, locked. Zeke used another old key from his ring. The drawer slid open. Most folders remained inside: insurance policies, land surveys, tax assessments, nothing unexpected, until he reached the final drawer. Empty. Not naturally empty. Several file dividers remained labeled: estate transfer, trust documents, ownership certificates, probate records, every folder missing. Someone had removed only the documents necessary to prove ownership, nothing else. The realization settled quietly. His father had not misplaced anything. Someone had deliberately cleaned the cabinet. He closed the drawer. Outside, an engine approached. Zeke stepped toward the window. A black SUV rolled slowly onto the property. It stopped near the mailbox. A man stepped out wearing business clothes rather than work boots. He looked around briefly before placing a large white sign into the ground. Then he climbed back inside and drove away. The entire visit lasted less than 3 minutes. Zeke waited until the vehicle disappeared before walking outside. The sign stood beside the gravel entrance. Coming soon. Buckeye Ridge Estates luxury residential community. Below the logo sat a phone number and artist rendering of expensive homes surrounding a private lake. The illustration covered the exact location where the farmhouse currently stood. Zeke stared at the image for several seconds. His grandfather cleared these fields by hand. His father spent 40 years keeping the land alive. Now, someone planned to erase all of it beneath asphalt and concrete. His phone vibrated. Linda Harper. He answered immediately. "I was hoping you'd call." "Where are you?" "The farm." Silence followed. Then Linda spoke carefully. "I found Buckeye Ridge Holdings." "What about them?" "The company didn't exist until 18 months ago." "So?" "It has one listed investor." "Ethan?" "No." "His cousin." Zeke looked back toward the construction sign. Linda continued. "I traced probate filings. Someone submitted amended estate paperwork last year. I pulled certified copies." "What did you find?" "The judge never signed them." Zeke closed his eyes briefly. "They're forged." "Very. The signatures don't even match." Wind pushed across the field. The orange survey ribbons fluttered harder. Linda lowered her voice. "Zeke, they're trying to transfer ownership before anyone notices. They only need one clean closing. After that, the land disappears forever." He remained silent. She understood his silence. "Did you find anything else?" "No." "Good. Then don't tell anyone you're there." The call ended. Zeke stood alone beside the road. The entire property suddenly felt different. Every fence, every tree, every acre. Someone had already divided it on paper. He walked back toward the pickup carrying only one old family photograph he found inside the farmhouse. Nothing else left the property. By late afternoon, he arrived at First National Bank. The safety deposit vault remained cool and silent. He added another memory card containing photographs of the survey stakes, the Buckeye Ridge sign, and the empty filing cabinet. The evidence continued growing, layer by layer. He trusted steel vaults more than closets, more than apartments, more than people. The sun had nearly set when he returned home. His apartment building looked ordinary. Children played basketball nearby. Neighbors grilled hamburgers outside. Nothing seemed unusual until he reached the second floor. His apartment door stood slightly open, only an inch, barely noticeable. Zeke stopped walking. His keys remained in his hand. He always locked the door, always. The hallway remained completely silent. No voices, no movement, no television sounds, only the distant hum of traffic beyond the parking lot. He stepped backward instead of forward. Slowly. Quietly. Then he looked toward the doorknob. Fresh scratches crossed the brass surface. Someone had forced it. Whoever entered knew exactly where to look. And deep inside the apartment beyond the half-open door, something heavy shifted against the wooden floor. Zeke Sullivan did not reach for the doorknob. He stepped backward instead. One slow step, then another. The hallway outside his apartment remained silent except for the buzzing fluorescent light above the stairwell. Somewhere outside, children laughed while chasing a basketball across cracked pavement. Normal sounds, comforting sounds. But experience had taught him that danger rarely announced itself loudly. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened the apartment security application. Months before the divorce, Olivia had convinced him to install a small Wi-Fi camera inside the living room so she could check on their old Labrador while the family traveled. The dog was gone now. The camera remained. The screen loaded. The image froze, then refreshed. His apartment appeared empty. The couch, the television, the kitchen table. Everything looked untouched. Yet the front door clearly stood open. Someone had entered. Someone had already left. He waited another 2 minutes before stepping inside. The smell reached him first. Not smoke, not alcohol, cologne. Strong men's cologne mixed with wet leather. The scent lingered in the air, fresh, very fresh. He locked the door behind him and remained perfectly still. Nothing moved. The bedroom remained empty. The bathroom door stood open. No footsteps, no voices, only silence. He began walking room by room. Carefully. The kitchen cabinets remained closed. The refrigerator untouched, nothing missing. The bedroom looked normal until he opened the closet. Every storage box had been pulled onto the floor. Old photo albums, camping gear, winter jackets. Someone had searched everything. Not angrily, methodically. He moved toward the desk beside the window. Every drawer stood open. Pens scattered across the floor. Utility bills lay upside down. Tax returns had been unfolded and examined. His passport sat on top of the pile. Nothing had been stolen. Someone had searched for documents. He already knew which ones. The lockbox, the estate papers, the flash drive. The originals had never been there. The intruders left empty-handed. He walked into the bedroom again. Under the mattress sat another fireproof pouch. Inside remained only old insurance cards and vehicle titles. Untouched. The thieves either missed it or knew it contained nothing useful. His attention shifted toward the window. Outside stood Mrs. Evelyn Dawson watering flowers beneath her balcony. She had lived next door for nearly 12 years. Nothing escaped her attention. Zeke walked downstairs. She looked up immediately. "Oh my goodness. I was hoping you'd come home." "You saw someone?" She nodded. "A black SUV. 2 men. They were here maybe 20 minutes. They said they were maintenance workers." "What did they look like?" "The tall one wore sunglasses. The other had a baseball cap. They carried tool bags. They stayed maybe 10 minutes." She paused. "They looked disappointed when they left." Zeke thanked her quietly. Before returning upstairs, she added one more detail. "I think one of them drove a Chevrolet Tahoe." The words settled heavily. The same type of SUV had circled his apartment days earlier. The same type Linda warned him about. Back upstairs, he opened his laptop. Instead of cleaning the mess, he logged into Evelyn's neighborhood Ring camera network. Several homeowners had publicly shared footage. He searched the timeline. 5 minutes later, he found it. A black Tahoe entered the parking lot at 5:17 p.m. The video angle showed only the rear, but the license plate appeared briefly as sunlight reflected across the bumper. He paused the video, zoomed in. Blurry, still readable. Ohio plate. JFK 3928. He copied the number into his notebook, then photographed the screen. Evidence first, conclusions later. His phone vibrated. Linda Harper? He answered immediately. I've got a plate number. She listened carefully while he read the numbers twice. I'll check it. 20 minutes later, she called back. Her voice sounded colder. The Tahoe belongs to Guardian Mutual Insurance. Zeke looked toward the scattered papers across his apartment floor. Guardian Mutual, Ethan Cross's employer. No coincidence remained. Linda continued. The vehicle is assigned to their Regional Investigations Department. Officially? Unofficially? Silence. Then she answered. It shouldn't be anywhere near your apartment. The call ended. Darkness settled over Columbus. Zeke cleaned nothing. Instead, he photographed every drawer, every footprint, every displaced object. He measured the pry marks on the doorframe with a tape measure from his toolbox. Then he backed every photograph onto another memory card. Only after documenting everything did he begin restoring the apartment. Near midnight, someone knocked softly. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. He opened the door. No one stood outside. Only a plain white envelope rested on the floor. No stamp, no address, no handwriting. Inside waited a single photograph. It showed the old Buick sitting inside Bay 3 at Carson Auto Repair. The picture had been taken that afternoon. Someone had been inside the garage parking lot. On the back of the photograph, 5 words had been written with black marker. Sell the car, walk away. Zeke studied the message for nearly a minute, then folded the photograph neatly, placed it inside a plastic evidence sleeve, and wrote the date and time across the top. His face remained calm, almost expressionless. For the first time since opening the trunk, he no longer doubted who stood behind everything. They were watching him. They were following him. And judging by the desperation growing with each passing day, whatever remained hidden inside that old Buick was worth far more than money. Wednesday morning began with rain. Thin gray clouds hung low above downtown Columbus, while courthouse employees hurried through puddles carrying coffee and umbrellas. Police cruisers lined the curb outside the Franklin County Justice Center. Attorneys in dark suits crossed the marble lobby with stacks of files pressed against their chests. The building looked calm. Inside, every conversation carried tension. Zeke Sullivan arrived 20 minutes early. His dark jacket still smelled faintly of engine oil from the previous night's shift. He carried 1 leather folder. Nothing else. No dramatic evidence, no large boxes, no witnesses following behind him, only quiet preparation. He passed through security without speaking. Metal detectors beeped. Bailiffs directed visitors towards different courtrooms. The hearing had been requested by Claire Sullivan only 48 hours earlier. According to her emergency filing, Zeke had begun harassing and stalking her following the divorce. The petition requested a protective order. It also requested that Zeke remain away from her residence and business offices. The accusation surprised almost everyone except Zeke. The narrator could only observe one thing. He never looked angry, only patient. Courtroom 4B slowly filled. Claire entered with Ethan Cross several minutes later. She wore a dark navy business suit and pearl earrings. Her posture remained perfect. To anyone watching, she looked frightened but composed. Ethan walked beside her, carrying expensive folders and speaking quietly with a young attorney Zeke had never seen before. And the three laughed once before noticing Zeke sitting alone. Their expressions changed immediately. Claire avoided eye contact. Ethan did not. He offered a small smile, confident, certain. The kind of smile worn by people who believed the ending had already been written. Then another woman entered. She moved quickly across the courtroom carrying a slim laptop case. Black hair, gray suit, no unnecessary jewelry. She walked directly towards Zeke. "Mr. Sullivan?" He stood. "Yes. I'm Rachel Morgan." They shook hands. Rachel had practiced civil litigation in Columbus for 15 years. Linda Harper arranged the meeting the previous night after reviewing the apartment break-in. Rachel wasted no time. "You brought copies?" "Yes." "The originals?" "Safe." "Good." She nodded once. "Keep them there." The hearing began shortly afterward. Judge Melissa Grant entered precisely at 9 o'clock. Everyone stood, then sat. The clerk read the case summary. Claire's attorney approached first. He spoke confidently. He described repeated phone calls, unexpected appearances, unwanted contact. He suggested Zeke remained emotionally unstable after the divorce. Claire lowered her eyes at appropriate moments, her hands folded neatly together. From the gallery, she appeared believable. Several spectators nodded sympathetically. The attorney finished. "We ask this court to protect my client before the situation escalates." Judge Grant turned toward Rachel. "Counsel." Rachel stood calmly. "No opening statement, Your Honor. I would simply like to ask several questions." Permission granted. Rachel approached Claire. "Mrs. Sullivan, have you received threatening messages from Mr. Sullivan?" "No." "Has he ever physically approached your residence?" "No." "Your workplace?" "No." "Has he contacted you more than once since the divorce?" Claire hesitated. "No." Rachel nodded. "So your petition is based on concern rather than actual misconduct?" Claire shifted slightly. "Yes." Rachel smiled politely. No further questions. The simplicity unsettled the room. Then Rachel called no witnesses. Instead, she requested permission to submit exhibits. Judge Grant agreed. Rachel connected her laptop to the courtroom display. The first image appeared. Security footage from Carson Auto Repair. Time-stamped. 2 unidentified men offering cash for the Buick. Their faces clearly visible. The next clip showed one opening his jacket. Guardian Mutual Insurance Identification Badge. The courtroom grew quiet. Rachel spoke evenly. "My client has experienced repeated attempts by unknown individuals to recover property legally transferred through the divorce settlement." Another image appeared. The black Tahoe outside Zeke's apartment. Then the Ring camera footage. Then photographs of the forced apartment door. Then the anonymous warning photograph left outside his apartment. Sell the car. Walk away. The judge leaned forward. Claire's attorney quickly stood. "Objection. Relevance." Rachel answered immediately. "My client is not the aggressor. He is the target." Judge Grant studied the exhibits silently. The objection disappeared. Rachel continued. Phone records appeared next. Claire's call, asking whether Zeke had opened the trunk. Unknown numbers contacting him afterward. Text messages offering money. The timing aligned perfectly. One after another, no accusations, only facts, only dates, only records. The quiet presentation carried more weight than any emotional argument. Claire remained motionless. Ethan no longer smiled. His eyes stayed fixed on the monitor. Rachel closed her laptop. "My client has not harassed Mrs. Sullivan." He has instead become the subject of repeated surveillance and attempted intimidation after receiving marital property. Judge Grant turned toward Claire's attorney. "Would you care to explain these exhibits?" The attorney shuffled papers. No answer arrived immediately. The silence lasted almost 20 seconds, long enough for every person inside the courtroom to notice. Judge Grant finally spoke. "The emergency petition is denied." Claire blinked. The judge continued, "I'm also issuing an order preserving all financial and property records connected to the Sullivan estate until further notice should related civil litigation arise." Rachel thanked the court. No celebration crossed Zeke's face. He simply gathered his folder. The hearing ended. People slowly exited into the hallway. Conversations immediately began. Law clerks whispered. Attorneys compared notes. Claire walked quickly toward the elevators without speaking. Ethan remained behind. He waited until the hallway emptied, then approached Zeke. Only a few feet separated them. Neither raised his voice. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks. "You know, you could have avoided all this." Zeke remained silent. Ethan stepped closer. "You should have crushed that car the day you got it." The words hung in the air. No denial, no confusion, only regret. Zeke looked directly into Ethan's eyes for the first time in years. His expression never changed. The narrator could only observe complete calm. He simply answered, "I haven't decided what to do with it." Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then he walked away. Rachel had witnessed everything. "So he knows." Zeke nodded. He just confirmed it. Outside the courthouse, rain had stopped. Sunlight reflected across wet sidewalks. Reporters gathered near another trial across the street, unaware that a quieter story had just shifted direction inside the building. Rachel opened her briefcase. "You realize something." "What?" "The moment they stop trying to buy the car, they'll try something else." Zeke looked toward the courthouse entrance where Claire and Ethan disappeared into a black sedan. "I know." Rachel handed him a business card. "From this point forward, don't meet anyone alone. Don't answer unknown calls. And don't trust anyone who suddenly becomes friendly." He placed the card inside his wallet. Traffic rolled steadily through downtown. Pedestrians crossed Broad Street. The city continued like any ordinary Wednesday. Yet inside Zeke's pocket rested the folded photograph of the Buick and the anonymous threat. Inside the locked garage waited the steel lockbox. Inside that box remained enough secrets to shake far more than a failed marriage. As he reached his pickup, his phone vibrated once. A new message arrived from an unknown number. Only 6 words appeared across the screen. "The flash drive is the real key." Thursday arrived before sunrise. A thin layer of fog drifted across the streets of Columbus, while delivery trucks rumbled through empty intersections. Downtown office buildings glowed with scattered lights as early workers prepared for another ordinary day. For Zeke Sullivan, nothing about the morning felt ordinary. The anonymous message from the courthouse still sat unread on his phone screen. The flash drive is the real key. He had spent the night thinking about those 6 words. Not once had he plugged the drive into his own computer. He trusted machines less than paper. Computers left traces. Paper remembered only what was written. By 8 o'clock, he was driving north toward Delaware County, where Linda Harper rented a small office behind an accounting firm. The building carried no sign, no advertisement, just a faded brick exterior beside a hardware store. Most people would never notice it. Linda preferred it that way. She opened the door before Zeke knocked. "I already made coffee." He entered quietly. The office contained little more than filing cabinets, 2 desks and shelves packed with binders from investigations that stretched back decades. Old habits surrounded Linda everywhere. She locked the front door behind him. "Did anyone follow you? I don't think so. You checked twice." She nodded with approval. From a storage closet, she rolled out a small aluminum case. Inside rested a laptop disconnected from the internet. Beside it sat a portable forensic drive reader and several evidence bags. Everything looked professional despite its age. Linda glanced toward the flash drive sealed inside its plastic sleeve. "You photographed it first." "Yes." "Good." She slipped on latex gloves. The drive connected to the reader. Nothing happened. Then a password window appeared. Linda frowned. Encrypted. She removed another device from the case, a forensic recovery tool. The machine quietly searched hidden partitions. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, new folders appeared. Deleted files, archived sectors, fragments of recovered data. Linda leaned closer. So, somebody tried wiping this, but they weren't careful. The first folder opened. Dozens of spreadsheets filled the screen. Vehicle identification numbers, claim numbers, insurance policy IDs, repair estimates, settlement amounts. Some claims reached $50,000. Others exceeded $200,000. The totals stretched across years. Zeke recognized several VIN numbers immediately. Many belonged to vehicles declared total losses after suspicious fires or staged collisions. He remembered inspecting some of them himself. Back then, investigators lacked enough proof to reopen the cases. Now, the missing records had returned. Linda quietly copied every file onto a secure drive. No internet, no printing, no mistakes. The second folder contained audio files. Small recordings, dates appeared beside each. Most lasted only seconds. One lasted nearly 12 minutes. Linda pressed play. Static filled the room. Then voices. A man's voice spoke first, calm, professional. "We'll need another signature." Another answered, "Zeke's, yes." It worked before. Silence followed. Then a woman's voice entered, soft, controlled. "I can handle that." Zeke did not move. He knew the voice immediately. Claire. The recording continued. "The estate account won't clear without matching paperwork." The man answered again. Then create matching paperwork. A short laugh followed. The recording ended. The office became silent. Linda slowly removed her glasses. No jury in Ohio would ignore that. Zeke stared at the black screen. His expression remained steady. Only his breathing changed slightly. Years of questions suddenly carried answers. His marriage had not collapsed by accident. It had been used. Linda opened another recording. This one sounded different. Traffic noise, car doors closing. Then Ethan's voice. "The warehouse cars are already burned. We just need inspections." Another man laughed. "Your mechanic won't notice. He won't even know his name's on the paperwork." The recording stopped. Linda looked towards Zeke. "They used you." He nodded once. "I know." The next folder contained photographs, hundreds of them, storage lots, damaged vehicles, insurance documents spread across tables. Claire appeared in several images beside Ethan, always smiling, always months before filing for divorce. The timeline grew impossible to deny. Then Linda opened the final directory. The folder title appeared in bold letters. Sullivan Farm Final Transfer. She clicked. Several PDF documents appeared. Probate amendments, ownership declarations, land transfer authorizations. Every page carried forged signatures. The judge, the probate clerk, even Thomas Sullivan. Dead men could not sign legal papers, yet somehow his signature appeared. Linda zoomed closer. Professional forgery. Very good, not perfect. She looked towards Zeke. They expected nobody to compare originals. He remained silent. Another document opened. Development Agreement. Buckeye Ridge Holdings. Projected value after subdivision $32 million. The room became completely still. Everything finally aligned. The warehouse fraud, the estate theft, the divorce, the missing records, the Buick, the farm. Every step had served one purpose: control the land. Money alone never explained the risk they had taken. $32 million did. Linda quietly saved every recovered file onto 3 encrypted drives. One remained with her. One entered an evidence envelope for Rachel Morgan. The third went into another sealed pouch, insurance against disaster. She turned towards Zeke. "Don't tell Olivia." He nodded. "Not yet. She deserves truth, but not all at once." He understood. The truth carried weight. Too much at once could crush people. As Linda packed the equipment away, one final hidden file appeared during the recovery scan. No folder, no title, only a video. Length 4 minutes, timestamp 3 years earlier. The image appeared grainy, a dashboard camera. Rain covered the windshield. The vehicle, parked beside an empty warehouse. Headlights illuminated 2 figures carrying boxes toward another SUV. Linda paused the video. She enlarged the frame. Claire, Ethan, no doubt remained. The timestamp showed 6 weeks before Zeke filed for divorce. She pressed play again. The camera microphone captured only fragments, boxes, metal, someone shouting. Then one sentence rose clearly above the rain. Claire's voice. "Once the farm transfers, he'll never know." The recording ended abruptly. Neither spoke. Outside, morning traffic continued beyond the office walls. People hurried to work. Children climbed onto school buses. Coffee shops filled with customers. Life continued normally. Inside the small office, however, years of lies had finally found a witness. Linda sealed the drives inside evidence bags, then looked directly at Zeke. "They've spent years hiding this. They'll spend everything trying to get it back." Zeke quietly picked up the silver watch that once belonged to his father. Its cracked crystal reflected the office light. He slipped it into his jacket pocket, then looked once more at the recovered folder labeled Sullivan Farm Final Transfer. The land was no longer simply family property. It had become the centerpiece of a conspiracy worth tens of millions of dollars. And somewhere across Columbus, Claire and Ethan still believed the flash drive had vanished forever. Friday afternoon arrived with unexpected sunshine. After nearly a week of gray skies, Columbus finally felt warm again. Office workers gathered outside cafes during lunch breaks. Children filled neighborhood parks. The city looked peaceful. Zeke Sullivan noticed none of it. He spent the morning replacing a transmission inside an aging Chevrolet Silverado while replaying the recovered recordings inside his mind. Claire's voice, Ethan's voice, the forged signatures, the plan for the Sullivan farm. Every answer only created new questions. Most of all, he thought about Olivia. She had spent years believing stories carefully built around half-truths and missing facts. He refused to destroy that illusion through anger. Truth should arrive quietly, the same way lies had arrived. Around 3 o'clock, Pete stepped into Bay 3 carrying a clipboard. "Someone's asking for you." "Customer." "I don't think so." "Young girl." "Looks nervous." Zeke removed his gloves. The front office stood empty except for one person, Olivia. She stood near the soda machine with both hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she had barely touched. The moment she saw him, she looked toward the floor. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Zeke broke the silence. "You found the shop?" She nodded. "I looked it up." "You could have called." "I know." Another silence settled between them. The office clock ticked softly against the wall. Outside, an air compressor started somewhere in the garage. Olivia finally looked up. I saw Ethan yelling at Mom. Zeke said nothing. He never yells. He did yesterday. She swallowed nervously. They were arguing about papers. What papers? I don't know. He kept saying the car ruined everything. The words landed heavily. Still, Zeke remained calm. He simply pulled 2 folding chairs from the corner of the office. They sat facing each other, like strangers. Like family. Olivia stared through the front window toward the parking lot. I think Mom's scared. Zeke folded his hands. Maybe. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. She looked at him carefully. Do you know something? He hesitated. Not because he feared telling her, because he feared telling her too much. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed one photograph. Only one. The picture of Claire and Ethan standing together outside the Cincinnati office building years before the divorce. He slid it across the desk. Olivia picked it up. Her eyebrows slowly tightened. When was this? 3 years ago. But, she looked again. You were still married. Yes. The room became completely silent. She flipped the photograph over, searching for some explanation that never appeared. Her voice became smaller. Mom told me they met after everything ended. I know. She stared at the photograph another full minute, then quietly returned it. You have more things like this. I do. You hate her now. The question surprised him. He looked toward the garage doors where afternoon sunlight stretched across concrete floors. No. Why not? Because hate doesn't fix anything. Olivia lowered her eyes. Small tears gathered but never fell. I don't know what to believe anymore. Zeke stood and walked toward an old filing cabinet. From inside, he removed a portable speaker. Nothing more. He connected it to his phone. Linda had advised him not to reveal every piece of evidence, only enough to let truth speak for itself. He selected one recording. Claire's voice filled the office. I can handle that. The estate account won't clear without matching paperwork. Then another man's voice. Then create matching paperwork. The recording stopped, only 20 seconds, nothing else. Zeke turned the speaker off. Olivia remained frozen. Her breathing slowed. The coffee cup slipped slightly inside her hands. She whispered one sentence. That's Mom. Yes. And those papers, I believe they were forged. She covered her mouth. For the first time since arriving, tears escaped. Not loud, not dramatic, only quiet disappointment. Zeke moved no closer. He let silence carry the moment. His father once taught him that people accepted truth faster when left alone with it. Several minutes passed. Olivia finally wiped her eyes. You didn't play the whole recording. No. Why? Because she's still your mother. The answer surprised her. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. I don't want to hate her. You don't have to. The office remained quiet again. Outside, customers arrived for oil changes and tire repairs. Life continued. Inside, one family quietly began changing for Siver. Olivia reached into her backpack. I almost forgot. She removed a large white envelope. I found this under Ethan's desk. He got mad when he couldn't find it. I think he was looking for it all night. She handed it to Zeke. The envelope contained property maps, development plans, engineering surveys, Buckeye Ridge Holdings. Several pages required signatures that remained blank. One document immediately caught his attention. Closing schedule, Friday, 10 a.m. the date. Tomorrow morning. The final transfer had been accelerated. Someone wanted the land before investigators could move. Zeke folded the papers carefully. His face remained calm. Inside, however, every piece finally connected. Olivia noticed his expression. What is it? He answered honestly. "They're running out of time." She looked frightened. "Are you in danger?" "I don't know. Ethan scares me." "I know." She hesitated, then quietly stood and walked around the desk. Without saying anything, she hugged him. The embrace lasted only seconds. Awkward. Careful. Years of distance could not disappear instantly, but something returned. Trust. When she stepped back, she reached into her pocket once more. A tiny brass key rested in her palm. "I found this taped inside Mom's jewelry box. It says SF. Zeke stared. The same initials engraved beneath his father's watch strap. SF Sullivan Farm. Or something else entirely. He accepted the key without speaking. Olivia walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned one final time. If Mom did something wrong, her voice almost disappeared. "Please, don't let them destroy Grandpa's land." The office door closed softly behind her. Zeke remained standing alone. The brass key rested beside the development papers. Tomorrow morning, the closing would begin. Somewhere across Columbus, Claire and Ethan believed they still controlled the ending. They had no idea their own house had just handed over the final missing piece. Saturday morning arrived before dawn. The sky above Springfield remained dark blue as the first hints of sunlight touched the eastern horizon. Fog drifted across empty cornfields while dew collected on old wooden fences. The Sullivan family farm looked exactly as it had for decades. Quiet, patient, waiting. By 7 o'clock, however, the gravel entrance began filling with vehicles. Black SUVs, luxury sedans, survey trucks, a catering van carrying coffee and pastries. People in expensive suits stepped onto ground that generations of farmers had once worked with their hands. None of them noticed the old pickup parked half a mile away behind an abandoned machine shed. Zeke Sullivan watched everything through binoculars. Beside him sat Rachel Morgan. Linda Harper arrived 10 minutes later carrying 2 banker boxes filled with documents. No one spoke much. Everything that needed saying had already been said. The closing meeting would begin at 9. If ownership transferred Buckeye Ridge Holdings, would immediately begin demolition permits. The farmhouse, the barn, the creek, everything would disappear. Rachel checked her watch. "Federal investigators are on standby. They won't move until we give them probable cause." Linda adjusted her glasses. "We only get one chance." Zeke looked toward the farmhouse. His father's rocking chair remained visible through the front window. He remembered sitting beside Thomas on quiet summer evenings while fireflies drifted across the fields. The old man rarely offered advice, but one sentence returned clearly now: "Don't rush when the truth is already walking toward you." At exactly 8:47 a.m., another black sedan entered the property. Claire stepped out first. She wore a pale gray suit and carried a leather portfolio. Ethan followed beside her, speaking into his phone. Neither smiled. Both looked exhausted. Several attorneys greeted them near the porch. Development executives unfolded maps across folding tables. The atmosphere resembled a business conference rather than the sale of family land. Rachel looked toward Zeke. "Ready?" He nodded once. The 3 walked toward the farmhouse. No one noticed them immediately. Everyone remained focused on paperwork. A title officer discussed boundary lines. Surveyors pointed toward the western pasture. An investment banker laughed while checking stock prices on his phone. Only when Zeke reached the porch steps did conversation begin slowing. One voice stopped, then another. Soon, complete silence spread across the gathering. Claire turned first. The color slowly disappeared from her face. Ethan froze. For several seconds, nobody moved. Zeke climbed the porch without hurry. His boots echoed softly against weathered boards. Rachel and Linda followed. The title officer approached politely. "Can I help you?" Rachel produced identification. My client contests today's transfer. Several lawyers exchanged confused looks. The title officer frowned. The estate has already cleared probate. Linda quietly placed one banker box onto the porch table, then another. The heavy sound echoed across the yard. She opened the first lid. Certified banking records, original estate documents, insurance claim files, photographs, audio transcripts, everything carefully organized. People stepped closer. Curiosity replaced confidence. Rachel removed the forged probate papers supplied by Buckeye Ridge, then placed the originals beside them. The differences became obvious immediately. Judge signatures, clerk stamps, notary seals, nothing matched. The title officer adjusted his glasses. His expression hardened. This closing is suspended. Ethan suddenly stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Those copies are fake. Rachel smiled calmly. They're originals. She handed him certified bank authentication records. He stopped speaking. Linda opened the second box. Inside rested enlarged photographs recovered from the Buick. Claire standing beside Ethan years before the divorce. Secret meetings, warehouse visits, financial ledgers, vehicle claim lists, every timeline connected perfectly. Several investors quietly stepped away from the tables. The title officer reached for his phone. Claire's breathing quickened. She looked toward Ethan. He refused to meet her eyes. For the first time in years, Zeke finally spoke directly to her. "Why, my father?" The question carried no anger, only sadness. Claire looked toward the farmhouse, toward the fields, toward everything she had nearly taken. Tears formed. They said nobody would get hurt. No one answered. Silence settled again. Then another sound interrupted everything. Police sirens. Distant at first, growing louder. 3 state police cruisers turned onto the gravel road. Behind them came 2 black federal SUVs. Dust rose behind every vehicle. People stepped backward instinctively. Investors began collecting briefcases. Surveyors quietly folded maps. No one laughed anymore. The lead investigator climbed from the SUV carrying a thick warrant folder. He approached Rachel first, then Linda. Both handed over evidence drives, signed statements, certified copies. The investigator nodded once. He turned toward Ethan. "Mr. Cross, we need to speak with you." Ethan remained motionless. His attorney immediately stepped forward. "My client." The investigator raised one hand. "We have warrants." Another agent approached Claire. She closed her eyes. The leather portfolio slipped from her hands onto the porch. Property maps scattered across old wooden boards. Wind carried several pages into the yard. One landed beside Zeke's boots. Buckeye Ridge Estates, future Phase 3. The farmhouse replaced by a private clubhouse. He quietly folded the page, then handed it back to the investigator. Around them, cameras began arriving. Local reporters rushed through the entrance after hearing police radio traffic. Microphones appeared, questions followed. Nobody answered. The investigators escorted Ethan toward an SUV. He looked back only once. His eyes met Zeke's across the crowded yard. No arrogance remained. No confidence, only realization. The quiet mechanic he dismissed had never fought with anger. He had fought with patience. Claire remained seated on the porch steps. She looked smaller than Zeke remembered. Years of ambition seemed to disappear beneath morning sunlight. Olivia arrived minutes later in another vehicle. She stepped out and saw police surrounding the farmhouse. Then saw her mother crying. Then saw Zeke standing beside the old porch rail. She walked toward him without hesitation. Neither spoke. She simply stood beside him, facing the fields. Together, They watched investigators carry banker boxes, computers, and legal files toward waiting vehicles. The land remained silent. The creek still flowed beyond the pasture. The farmhouse still stood. For today, at least, the Sullivan farm belonged to the family that had loved it. But as federal agents opened the final evidence box recovered from the Buick, one investigator looked toward Rachel with visible surprise. Hidden beneath the last layer of documents rested another sealed envelope. Across the front, written in Thomas Sullivan's own handwriting, were 6 words: "Open only after they betray him." The news spread across Ohio before sunset. Television helicopters circled above the Sullivan farm while reporters crowded the gravel entrance. Microphones appeared beside patrol cars. Camera crews filmed federal agents carrying evidence boxes from the farmhouse one after another. For most viewers, it looked like another financial investigation. For Zeke Sullivan, it looked like the end of 4 silent years. He never spoke to reporters. He never stood in front of cameras. Instead, he remained on the back porch where his father once drank coffee every morning before sunrise. The rocking chair still faced the eastern fields. Nothing else seemed to move. Only the wind. Federal agents spent nearly 8 hours documenting every room inside the farmhouse. Hard drives disappeared into evidence bags. Property records filled cardboard boxes. Even old filing cabinets were photographed before being sealed. Rachel Morgan remained beside investigators, quietly answering questions and organizing certified copies of the recovered documents. Linda Harper handled the financial records. Every transfer, every forged signature, every insurance claim. The timeline now stretched across almost 5 years. It became impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Near dusk, Agent Daniel Foster stepped onto the porch carrying the sealed envelope discovered inside the lockbox. Thomas Sullivan's handwriting remained perfectly visible. Open only after they betray him. Rachel looked towards Zeke. "This belongs to you." He accepted it carefully. The paper had yellowed with age. The envelope had been sealed with clear packing tape instead of wax. Practical. Exactly like his father. For nearly a minute he simply held it. The narrator could see only one emotion inside him. Not anger. Grief. He slowly opened the flap. Inside rested 3 folded sheets of notebook paper. The handwriting remained unmistakable. Steady. Simple. Honest. Zeke unfolded the first page. His father's words filled the page. "Son, if you're reading this, something happened that I hoped never would. People don't always steal with guns. Sometimes they steal with signatures. Sometimes they steal by making good people doubt themselves." He stopped reading, his eyes closed briefly. The porch remained silent. Only leaves rustled across the yard. He continued. Thomas described discovering suspicious banking activity months before his death. Unknown transfers, unexpected visitors, questions from strangers asking about mineral rights beneath the farm. The old man had trusted no one except his son. Unable to prove anything, he quietly gathered copies of every important record. When he realized someone had entered the farmhouse searching for documents, he hid everything inside the old Buick. The car had remained parked inside a storage building for years. The lockbox had never been meant for Claire or Ethan. It had always been meant for Zeke, if betrayal ever came. Thomas had prepared for it. Rachel quietly read over Zeke's shoulder. Neither spoke. The final paragraph remained short. The land isn't valuable because of money. It's valuable because family only loses it once. Zeke folded the letter carefully. No tears appeared. He simply placed it inside his jacket beside the silver watch. Both belonged together. The investigation continued throughout the following weeks. Federal subpoenas reached banks across Ohio. Insurance companies opened internal audits. Warehouse claims, once considered closed, suddenly returned under criminal review. Guardian Mutual Insurance suspended Ethan Cross immediately. 3 days later, they terminated his employment. The company's board publicly announced cooperation with investigators. Behind closed doors, executives fought desperately to distance themselves from the growing scandal. The evidence left little room for argument. Dozens of insurance files carried forged inspections. Several repair certifications used Zeke's copied signature. More than 14 staged claims resurfaced. Combined losses exceeded $12 million. Meanwhile, probate court reopened Thomas Sullivan's estate. Bank examiners reconstructed years of missing transfers. The money trail eventually circled back through shell companies connected to Buckeye Ridge Holdings. Every path returned to Ethan. Claire's role proved different. She had signed documents, approved transfers, repeated false statements during probate. Whether she understood the entire scheme remained uncertain. The law would decide that. One Monday morning, she voluntarily surrendered at the county courthouse accompanied by her attorney. No cameras captured dramatic scenes. No handcuffs appeared. She walked quietly through the same doors where she once finalized her divorce. This time, she entered alone. The newspapers published her photograph anyway. Former clients canceled listings. Her brokerage license entered review. Within days, the elegant public image she had built over years quietly collapsed. Zeke never celebrated. He repaired transmissions, changed brake pads, rotated tires. Life inside Carson Auto Repair continued almost exactly the same. Co-workers occasionally asked questions. He answered very few. The quiet mechanic remained quiet. One afternoon, Olivia arrived after school carrying 2 hamburgers and a paper bag of fries. She sat beside him outside the garage while traffic passed along Broad Street. Neither mentioned court. Neither mentioned Claire. Instead, they watched customers come and go. Finally, Olivia spoke. "I drove past the farm yesterday." Zeke looked at her. It looked peaceful. It always was. She nodded. "I remembered catching fireflies there." He smiled faintly. So did I. For the first time in years, the silence between father and daughter felt comfortable instead of painful. Several weeks later, Rachel called. The probate judge signed the restoration order. What does that mean? The Sullivan estate is officially reinstated. The fraudulent transfers are void. The land returns to its rightful ownership. Zeke thanked her quietly, then ended the call. He walked into Bay 3. The old Buick still sat where everything had begun. Federal investigators had finally released it. Dust covered the hood. Rust still lined the doors. Nothing about the car looked valuable, yet hidden inside its forgotten trunk had rested enough truth to save an entire family's history. Zeke placed one hand against the faded blue paint. Cold metal met rough skin. The Buick had carried lies for years. Now it carried none. Outside the garage, the evening sun dipped toward the horizon. Long shadows stretched across the parking lot. Olivia stood near the office door waiting for him to finish. He looked toward her, then back at the Buick. The investigation was ending. The court battles would eventually fade. The headlines would disappear, but some things would remain. A father's letter, a daughter's trust, and an old car everyone laughed at until it changed everything. Autumn arrived quietly over Clark County. The cornfields surrounding the Sullivan farm had turned golden beneath crisp October skies. Cool wind carried the scent of dry leaves across the old pasture while geese drifted south in long, uneven lines. Nearly 6 months had passed since federal agents closed the gravel road and carried away the final evidence boxes. The television crews were gone. The reporters had found newer scandals. The headlines had disappeared. The land remained. Zeke Sullivan stood beside the weathered fence that overlooked the eastern field where his father once planted soybeans every spring. Nothing about the morning felt extraordinary. That was exactly why it mattered. Peace rarely arrived with noise. It simply stayed after everything else left. The probate court had officially restored ownership of every acre to the Sullivan Family Trust. The fraudulent transfers had been voided. Buckeye Ridge Holdings dissolved under mounting civil claims. Its investors quietly withdrew before additional lawsuits could reach them. The glossy development signs vanished from the roadside almost overnight. Only faint holes in the ground remained where the posts had stood. Nature reclaimed them quickly. The criminal cases moved more slowly. Federal prosecutors filed dozens of charges involving insurance fraud, conspiracy forgery, money laundering, and financial deception. The investigations expanded beyond Ohio. Additional companies appeared. Additional victims emerged. The conspiracy proved larger than investigators originally believed. The warehouse fires, the forged repair inspections, the missing estate money, the shell corporations, everything connected through years of carefully hidden transactions. Ethan Cross accepted a plea agreement after investigators uncovered additional financial records stored overseas. His testimony exposed partners nobody expected. The sentence waiting for him would likely consume most of the years he once planned to spend becoming wealthy. Claire Sullivan never stood beside him again. Her attorneys negotiated separately. She admitted signing documents she claimed she never fully understood. Whether fear or greed guided those decisions no longer mattered. The court weighed evidence instead of explanations. Her real estate license disappeared. Her professional reputation followed soon afterward. The elegant image she spent years building dissolved quietly into public records and forgotten newspaper archives. Zeke never attended a single hearing after giving his testimony. He answered questions, presented evidence, returned home. Justice belonged to the courtroom. His life belonged somewhere else. Carson Auto Repair looked exactly as it always had. Oil stains covered concrete floors. Air compressors rattled through the afternoon. Customers complained about brake noise and dead batteries. Pete still forgot where he left his tools. The calendar behind the office desk remained 2 months behind. Nothing remarkable changed, except business quietly improved. Word spread that the quiet mechanic who helped expose millions in fraud could probably be trusted with an engine. People drove farther to reach his shop. They rarely recognized him from television. Those who did usually asked one question: "How did you stay so calm?" He always answered the same way: "My father fixed tractors." Most people laughed politely without understanding. That answer was enough. Late one afternoon, Olivia arrived carrying a cardboard box. She parked beside Bay 3, where the old Buick still rested. The federal government had released it months earlier. Zeke repaired the engine but never repainted the faded blue body. The rust remained. The cracked dashboard remained. The torn driver's seat remained. He wanted nothing hidden. Olivia stepped out carrying the box. "I found these." Inside rested old family photographs recovered from storage after Claire moved from the house. Birthday parties, fishing trips, Christmas mornings, camping weekends. Tiny moments everyone thought had disappeared forever. Together they spread the photographs across the Buick's hood. Neither spoke much. The pictures spoke well enough. One image showed Thomas Sullivan teaching 6-year-old Olivia how to hold a fishing pole. Another showed young Zeke rebuilding an old tractor while his father watched proudly from a folding chair. Olivia smiled quietly. "I forgot most of this." "You remembered enough." She'd looked toward the farmhouse visible beyond distant trees. "I want my kids to know this place someday." Zeke looked across the fields. "So do I." The wind shifted. Dry leaves rolled across the driveway. Somewhere beyond the creek, a flock of birds lifted into the sky. The farm sounded exactly as it had 20 years earlier. Simple. Alive. Weeks later, volunteers from the local historical society visited the property. They convinced Zeke not to demolish the aging farmhouse. Instead, they helped restore it. Fresh white paint replaced weathered boards. The porch received new supports. The roof stopped leaking. Thomas Sullivan's rocking chair returned to its old place facing east. Every morning, sunlight reached it first. One Saturday, neighbors gathered for a small community picnic. Children chased each other across open grass. Farmers discussed harvest prices. Retired couples brought homemade pies. Nobody talked about courtrooms or fraud investigations. Nobody mentioned television cameras. The farm simply became a farm again. As evening approached, Olivia walked onto the porch carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to her father. They sat together in silence. Fireflies slowly appeared above the pasture, almost exactly as they had years before. Olivia reached into her jacket pocket. She removed the cracked silver wristwatch that once belonged to Thomas Sullivan. It had been professionally restored. The crystal shined again. The leather strap had been replaced. Only the tiny engraving beneath the buckle remained unchanged. SF. She fastened the watch onto Zeke's wrist. It belongs here. He looked at it quietly. The second hand moved smoothly once more. Time had started again. The narrator could see only one final truth inside the quiet mechanic. He never won because he shouted louder. He never won because he wanted revenge. He won because he refused to abandon patience when everyone else chose deception. The old Buick remained parked beside the barn as the sun disappeared beyond the western fields. Visitors still laughed when they saw it. Some called it junk. Some wondered why anyone would keep such an ugly car. Zeke never explained. He simply smiled faintly whenever someone asked. Because appearances had fooled everyone once. They would never fool him again. The trunk stayed closed. Its secrets no longer mattered. The truth it carried had already saved everything worth keeping. Sometimes life hides its greatest blessings inside the things the world laughs at. An old car, a forgotten photograph, or a quiet person standing alone may carry more truth than the loudest voices in the room. Zeke's journey reminds us that patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender, and real strength often comes from refusing to let anger make our decisions. In the end, evidence spoke louder than accusations, and integrity outlasted deception. The things worth protecting, family honesty and legacy, can never truly be measured by money. Maybe you've been underestimated before. Maybe someone judged you by what you owned, the job you had, or the mistakes they believed you made. If so, remember that your value isn't decided by public opinion. Time has a way of revealing character, and truth has a way of finding its way into the light when we refuse to give up on it. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that something everyone dismissed turned out to change your life? Share your experience in the comments below, because your story might encourage someone else who is struggling today. And if you enjoy emotional stories about resilience, justice, and unexpected second chances, be sure to subscribe and join us again, because tomorrow's story may remind you that hope often arrives in the most unlikely places.